Thanks, Yan, and hello, everyone. So my name is Jill, and I've been working in the industry for more than 8 years. But in the past, I was mainly helping the corporate in terms of developing the business strategy. And so for today's session, actually, I'll be mainly focusing on how we can leverage the analytics tool to help us to monetize better. So a little bit background of my team. So we are working very closely with developers and companies from Southeast Asia, especially on the monetization piece. So the platform our team is taking care of would be Google Admob. So it's a advertisement monetization platform for your mobile games or mobile apps. For today's agenda, so I will be starting with an intro on the overall state of the current mobile apps monetization trends, and following by talk a little bit about Firebase plus the integration with Google Admob. So I guess before I start, I want to ask how many of you have been using Firebase? Please show me your hands. Okay, one finger. Okay, two. Good. So I hope that after today's session, you guys can really think about from another angle, like how you can really use all the user tools, user metrics into the actionable strategy for your mobile games. So I think finally, I will also share of some of the actual cases and insights from all the partners we are working with. So a little bit background here. So recently, actually, our team been working very closely with those heavy IAP Japanese companies and also Korean partners, because for the gaming space, it's actually getting much more competitive these days. So not only the, like I would say, like more indie game studios been trying to find a better way to monetize, so as those more experienced and even mature Japanese or Korean gaming companies. So today I'll be sharing a bit of the cases and studies from there as well. Okay, so if we're looking at the current states of the overall mobile apps monetization trends, so here is some of the data from App Annie. So actually for myself, before I joined before I joined Google, I was also working with App Annie managing the APAC business. So a little bit background here, if you are looking at the trends, so here will be the forecast for 2020. So if we are looking at the overall revenue spread, in 2015, we see the gaming is actually still taking over more than half of the revenue share. That would be around 66%. And if we're looking further into the monetization model, we know that in the mobile either gaming or apps business, the main monetization model will be coming from either IAPs or the advertisements. So one interesting trend is that if we are looking at the advertisements, that would be the mobile game in the in-app advertisement revenue. So growing towards 2020, we see that for the both sectors, we are continue to forecast our very positive trends. So entering the 2020, actually the forecast would be the global revenue on the mobile games itself, including IAP and advertisements, will be standing more than over 104 billion. So that's the industry's overview when it comes to monetization. So the second part, we can also look deeper into the platform itself. So on the platform itself, on the left-hand side would be the download forecast, and on the right-hand side would be the revenue forecast. So I guess one trend each of us might already know very well already, which is in terms of the volume, which will be the downloads. Usually Google Play is the platform that you need to be. And in terms of the revenue, in terms of the current states, iOS, because of the user purchasing power, usually is higher than the Google Play's users. So as of now, the average purchasing from the users still higher on the iOS. But how about in terms of the future trends? So on the mobile, when we talk about the future trends, actually one key thing we need to keep in mind would be the downloads. So usually if we want to look into the potential growing markets, the highest growth rate from the downloads, that would be the country you need to pay attention to. So for example, the recent trends we are seeing in terms of the future growth rates, the higher potential countries would be emerging markets such as Mexico, Brazil, and also Indonesia. So especially Indonesia and Southeast Asia region, we see a very, very good potential for the future in terms of the revenue opportunities. Okay, so the last one on the trends, I just want to highlight that one factor is that we already know would be the freemium will still dominate in terms of the total downloads. And the second important fact is that because of the user spend has shifting more and more towards the digital, so as the advertisers. So that's why if you're looking at the overall forecast in terms of the CAGR on the in-app advertising revenue, we see a very positive and high potential, which translating into like over 20% of the CAGR in the in-app advertising revenue. So this is another key fact that we can keep in mind when it comes to the mobile apps business. Okay, so next part we'll be talking a little bit more about Firebase and how you can actually translate all those user data into the actionable business strategies. So before I start to talk deeper, we can start with a little bit intro about Google Admob. So has anyone here been using Google Admob to monetize? Please show me your hands. Okay, great, thank you. So hopefully after today's session, next time I can see everyone showing their hands. So for Google Admob, so we are the advertisement platform to help the developers and companies to monetize better through the in-app advertisements. So up to now, we already have like more than 1 million apps are using Admob to monetize from both Google Play and also iOS. In terms of the revenue we've been paying out, so for the past years, we've been paying out up to more than $3.5 billion to our partners. So that hopefully can be you in the coming years. And in terms of the overall unique device, means that how many users that we are actually able to engage with. So we've also been on more than 1.3 billion unique user devices. So what does this mean? This means that we already have a very strong background knowledge in terms of what would be the right users for your app and on the right time for the advertisements. And when it comes to Google, another strength from us is that we have a very, very strong relationship with the global advertisers. So this can also allow to help you to scale better, faster with all the global networks and global audience with a very stable source of income. Okay, so the next part, I'll give you guys a bit intro about Firebase. So probably most of you have heard of Google Analytics, because Google Analytics is actually the analytics tool providing for the web companies. So in an essence, Firebase is the analytics tool with a lot of other built-in features specifically designed for the app developers and the app companies. So how does it differ from Google Analytics? Firebase is completely free, and in terms of the data, there's no threshold, because for those who were using a GA, you probably know that there was a threshold on the GA. but Firebase is completely free and unlimited. For some other key features you might be interested in, it's also can be very, very powerful in the future, is that its ability to integrate with all the Google platforms. Meaning that not only it can integrate with Google Admob, but also on the like Google AdWords. If you are doing the marketing campaign in the future, you can also see a very detailed attribution reports on the Firebase. And another key function would be its ability to integrate with Google Play. So this can also be very powerful. So it means that if you are on the Firebase, you can have not only the buy side, sell side, but also demand side of the data of your own user data. And in the long term, you can use all those data to develop into a strategy that suits best for yourself. And you will also be able to validate those strategies based on the changes of your own user data. So that's actually the real power of the Firebase versus the old integration with the Google platforms. Okay, so how can we integrate the Firebase with Admob, and what is the benefit of it? So I think this would be the part I will talk more for today's session, because I understand that probably most of the audiences here are focusing on building the mobile games. Maybe I can have a sense of the percentage. So how many of you are working on the mobile games? Huh? Only, oh, not many. How many of you are working on the mobile apps? Oh, actually we have more mobile apps. So for today's session, we can also use the concept applied to the mobile apps. In essence, it's the same. So when it comes to the mobile apps user data, I would say that one of the most important metrics is definitely retention, right? We all know that retention is the key, especially these days. For example, on the Google Play, when it comes to ranking, now what they take into consider, also including retention. So retention is very, very important. And the longer your users are willing to stay within your app, within your game, the more opportunities that you will be able to monetize with them. So that's why retention is really, really the key when it comes to the mobile apps. And some other very important metrics would be including like IAPs or the screens, means that on the different screens within your app, on which screen exactly are you able to engage or monetize with your user more. And also some others are like audience segments. This is important is because actually you should definitely design the overall monetization mechanism based on the different countries and also the different user segments. What does this mean? It means that when it comes to those well spenders versus those non-spenders, the way you engage with them should be differently. So this is very important. And when it comes to advertisement revenue, what would be the top metrics? Advertisement revenue definitely would be one, which would be like how much money we'll be able to make. And also impression, click, and ad units, right? But when it comes to nowadays, we know that the overall mobile landscape is very, very competitive, and we also talk about retention. So what's really important is that how are we able to combine these two sources of data together and take real actions. So with the integration, actually Admob and Firebase will be able to help you to understand like what is my true LTV when I take the consideration for both advertisement revenue and also the IP revenue. And the other question that this can be answered would be, we know that rewarded ads is one of the very good formats to interact with the users, right? So when it comes to the rewarded ads, how does it really impact my overall ARPU and user engagement rates? And the last question would be also very interesting. So this is linking back to the segmentation I was talking about. So how does my advertisement revenue actually performing differently across to the purchaser versus non-purchaser? Yeah, so Firebase will be help you to answer above questions by, first of all, it provides a free functionality in terms of the A/B testing. So this one is actually very, very easy to do with Firebase. I'm not sure like how many of you have done A/B testing within your app, but I would say that based on my experience to work with my partners, this is very, very important. It's like one of the very simple rules, but not many people do this. So with Firebase, you can do A/B testing easily. And Firebase also provide the metrics to allow you to understand that what is the percentage of the advertisement revenue that your users are using with your particular screen. And this one can also be broken down into the ad units level. Yeah. And you can also tailor the overall ads experience to across to the different segments of the users. So for example, if it's in the emerging markets, you should definitely try to set the advertisement frequency higher. But if it's a mature markets like US or CJK, China, Japan, Korea, you should definitely set the frequency lower, because from our experience or based on the previous A/B testing results, we've observed that usually from the more mature countries, they value the UX very, very high, and it's also very likely they will be your IP spender. So it's better to provide a better UX for them. But when it comes to emerging markets, because usually the percentage of the user who are spending usually is much lower, so that's why you can set a higher frequency for the advertisement. So this is just some kind of tips or angles that you can do the A/B testing experiment with your apps. Yeah, and the last one would be the remote config. So remote config is one of the feature within Firebase. Means that if you want to do the user segmentations, you can just choose from Firebase accordingly without update the codes into your app. It means that you don't have to publish a new release. Okay, so I will go deeper into all this data later by a live case study. Before that, I just want to highlight about some interesting features that Admob have. So for example, the first one would be on the current Admob version, we actually will be able to show you the revenue cards by different monetization models. So it means that on the dashboard, you can see the revenue from IAPs, advertisements, and also e-commerce if you are an e-commerce app. So this one can allow you to have a better understanding of the total revenue and total distribution within your app. And also on the Admob, we also provide a side-by-side comparison. So next to the revenue cards, we also have the user engagement metrics. So like every day, it will be very easy for you to understand that what are the changes in terms of the usage engagement rate comparing to my revenue changes. So for example, if you launch a new feature in your app or your gaming or in your games, then maybe you will observe a positive changes in terms of the user engagement rates, right? Which will also translate into the positive changes on the revenue. Okay, so how about Firebase? On the Firebase, we've mentioned that now Firebase also providing some very interesting and actionable insights. So I would say one of the very important metrics would definitely be ARPU, AR, and also ARPPU. And on the below side, you can also see the retention changes. Right, and another very key insight that Firebase is providing would be LTV. We all know that LTV is a very important indication when it comes to user acquisition strategy. So ensures that if your CPI cost is lower than your LTV. Sorry, well, our user acquisition expert will be coming on the stage after me. So if your LTV is higher than your user acquisition cost, your CPI, then you can run a very profitable, sustainable business. So this is actually the business model I've seen with most of our China utility partners, right? So they're actually making a very, very profitable, a good margin business based on carefully calculating the changes on the LTV versus CPI by different countries. And with Firebase, the LTV index is provided for free. Okay, so the next part, I will be talking a little bit on the A/B testing. So A/B testing is very easy. So it's just a way to help you to validate your idea. So for example, if I think that I want to change my store listing icon to a better, to a different image, like will it affect my downloads? And if I want to change the interstitial ads frequency differently, will it impact my revenue and also user engagement metrics? So this can be easily done on the Firebase through remote config. So I will just show two actual cases. So the first one would be to measure the overall user metric changes when it comes to different settings on the advertisement. And the other way you can do the to do the experiment is that, for example, you can set the different frequency cap on the interstitial and try to find out the actual cases to impact the retention rate or the average user session time or average user session spending. This is important because sometimes I think as a developers or mobile apps company, sometimes we will have this kind of a hypothesis based on our experience that we think might be true, but after the experiments, it might not be true. So that's why it's very important that you need to validate your idea with the real data. And another question a lot of the partners will ask me is that they always ask me, hey, do you have a benchmark for the industry or for my app based on this kind of scenario? I always advise them that it's always better to test out with your own users because each app is very unique and each user segment is very unique. So I will always encourage you to test out maybe just starting with like 5% of your traffic, then you can separate into the different testing group. Okay. So before I move into the last part, I will show you guys about a real case study from our Japanese partner and how they actually leverage Firebase data into the mobile gaming strategy. So before I move into this part, anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Right, so this is the cases actually we presented in the Google I/O this year. So Funky Dam is coming from B-Works, and B-Works is one of our Japanese casual game partner. So why this case is interesting? Because Funky Game they have been in the market for quite a while, and they want to find a way to help them to continue to uplift the overall revenue from not only IAPs and also from advertisement. The other thing they want to try to fix is that they want to know like how they can find another way to further improve their retention rate. So this would be the overall background, and what they did was very simple. So they just try to do a segment. So they did the coding on set the user property on the current level. So in this way, on the segmentation feature within Firebase, it can automatically help you to segment the different users based on like how long, which level they are playing with. So this one can be applicable to your games or to your apps. So for example, to your apps, you can set the user property accordingly based on the different funnels. Yeah, so the first interesting they found out is on the changes of the DAU. So on the x-axis, so they actually have, overall they have 41 levels in their game. So this one can be applicable if you're an app. You can say as like, for example, the deeper funnel into your app versus the DAU changes. So one interesting fact they found is that they found actually the highest DAU are sitting with those who are already complete their games, but those users are continue to stay within their app. So this is the first insight they which is quite different from originally how they thought. And so what action did they take after they found this insight? So they realized that, hey, actually a lot of users keep playing after the level 41. So they've known that there's a need for them to expand the overall levels to enable to let those users to further migrate upper into the different or new gameplays. And after they develop new levels, they also did like two things. The first thing is they also use the house ads. Means that if you have like more than one apps in your portfolio, you can cross promotion your own app. And the second thing they did is they use the Firebase cloud message to re-engage with their users, to tell them, hey, there's a new updates in the levels. Okay. And another key metrics they look into would be the uninstall rates. So this is also quite interesting. So when it comes to uninstall rates, right, they found that actually the highest uninstall rates would be before level 8. So what action did they take? So this would be some of the corresponding tasks within the different levels. And this would be the total revenue distribution by levels. So this is also quite interesting. Similar to the DAU graph, if you guys can still remember. So the same trend actually also happened within the later stage. So they've observed that a very high proportion of the IAPs actually happening with those loyal users in the later stage. And for the early stage, so that would be before level 8, corresponding with a pretty high uninstall rate that users tend not to spend on the IAPs. So what did they do when they learned about these two insights? Okay, so what they did is that they observed that before level 8, there's a pretty high uninstall rate. So they actually tried to adjust the overall difficulty before level 8 and try to uplift the retention. And they also try to add more social function before level 8 to help the users to stay in the game longer. So these are very, very important actions they took after they realized all these insights from their own users. Right, so this would be the revenue we're talking about in terms of before level 8, less users will be willing to spend on the IP within the game. So I guess for us as an app developers and companies, if we are also monetized with IP, it's very important for us to try to increase the conversion rate as early as possible, means that as early stage as possible, and also important for us to try to uplift the overall average spending. So here comes another question, like whether we should focus more on the overall transaction or the average revenue. So means that should I be focusing on to convert like most of my users, or should I only focusing on to let those well spenders spend more? Based on our experience, it's actually the former. So means that it's very important for you to try to convert as many percentage of users as possible. Okay, so based on the spending pattern, another action the developer took was that they also built in the rewarding ads in the before level 8. Try to let the user stay in the game longer and try to make the overall gameplay easier. And they also did A/B testing. Means that when they implement the rewarding ads, they also carefully monitor the overall impacts on the IAP to ensure that the overall revenue is the highest. Cool. Okay, so this is another interesting fact. So this is actually quite common, something we call the banner blind, which means that in the later stage, because the users have already get used to the banners, actually the overall CTR has dropped, which leading to a lower revenue from banners. So what they did is that they increased the different diversity of the ads, means that they use multiple formats to overcome this one. Okay, so in the future, like for us, or even for them, what other experiments or strategy they can try to do? One of the very interesting angle that we've been trying to work with the more experienced partner would be the hybrid of rewarded and also the IAP model, and try to use rewarded as a tool to uplift the overall conversion rate and the average IAP spending. Okay, so the last part, I just want to highlight that because before Admob has always been known from our interstitial and banner performance, and recently, I think last year Q1, we also launched the rewarded demand and also rewarded mediation platform. So if you are in the mobile apps or mobile games, this is definitely one of the formats that I would encourage you guys to try out, because this format can provide a very good user experience to the users. Okay, so that will be my today's presentation. Do you guys have any questions want to ask? Okay, if no, I'll also be around. So you guys can also let me know if you have any further topic want to discuss. So with that, next we will have Iman. So Iman is from Google Play AdWords team, and he's the expert in the machine learning and also user acquisition. Okay.